It started with a single announcement, a decision that would send shockwaves through the global economy.
In the last few minutes, U.S. President Donald Trump has announced sweeping tariffs on goods.
Tariffs are back, and this time, the consequences would be more devastating than anyone could have imagined. For years, President Donald Trump had framed his economic policies around one central idea: America first. He claimed that American industries were under attack, that jobs were vanishing, and that foreign nations, including Canada, were taking advantage of the United States through unfair trade practices. His solution? Tariffs. But this wasn't just any trade war. This was a battle between two of the world's most interconnected economies, Canada and the United States. And when the U.S. imposed massive tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, the fallout was immediate. Factories across Canada slowed production. Businesses scrambled to find alternatives. Prices surged. And in boardrooms across North America, CEOs and economists warned, this is only the beginning. Then, Trump made an even bolder statement. He claimed that the best solution to this escalating economic war was for Canada to become the 51st state of the United States. Was it a joke? A negotiation tactic? Or something more sinister? The backlash in Canada was instant and fierce. Politicians, business leaders, and everyday citizens rejected the idea outright. Canada had fought for its independence. It wasn't about to surrender it now. But the tariffs didn't stop there. Trump went even further, threatening a staggering 250% tariff on Canadian dairy products. For years, the U.S. and Canada had clashed over dairy trade. Canada's supply management system, designed to control production and stabilize prices, was seen by the U.S. as an unfair advantage. Now, Trump was making it personal. Canada had a choice: back down or fight back. And it chose to fight. In an unprecedented move, Canada imposed retaliatory tariffs worth billions of dollars. But this wasn't just about economics, it was about strategy. The tariffs were targeted: ketchup, whiskey, orange juice, steel, aluminum. These weren't random products. They were chosen to hurt industries in key U.S. states, the very states that had voted for Trump. Canada was sending a message: if you want a trade war, we will fight it on our terms. The automotive industry became the next battleground. The U.S. threatened to impose new tariffs on Canadian cars and auto parts. The impact could be catastrophic. Canada's auto sector relied on integrated supply chains that spanned the border. Tariffs wouldn't just hurt Canadian businesses, they would cripple American automakers too. But the biggest counterstrike was yet to come. Ontario, one of Canada's most powerful provinces, stepped in. Premier Doug Ford issued a chilling warning: Ontario would cut electricity exports to the United States. The U.S. depended on Canadian energy. Ontario supplied power to states like New York, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Cutting that supply could have dire consequences, especially during peak energy seasons. And Ford didn't stop there. He announced that Ontario would match U.S. tariffs dollar for dollar. If the U.S. imposed a 50% tariff on Canadian steel, Ontario would impose a 50% tariff on American goods. It was economic warfare at a level never seen before. And then came the ultimate act of retaliation. Ontario canceled a $100 million contract with Starlink, the satellite internet company owned by Elon Musk. The deal was supposed to provide high-speed internet to remote areas of Canada. But in the wake of Trump's tariffs, Ontario refused to do business with companies tied to the American economy. Musk was caught off guard. The Starlink cancellation made headlines worldwide, and it was a warning to U.S. businesses. Canada would not back down. As the trade war escalated, it sent shockwaves through global financial markets. Investors panicked. The Canadian dollar weakened. The stock prices of major steel and aluminum companies plummeted. And then came the unexpected twist. Canada turned to China. With the U.S. proving to be an unreliable trade partner, Canada sought alternative markets, and China, locked in its own trade war with the U.S., was eager to capitalize. Chinese buyers rushed to purchase Canadian oil, agricultural products, and raw materials. Tankers once destined for the United States began sailing toward China. The balance of power was shifting. Canada was proving that it didn't need the U.S. Trump's administration suddenly faced an unintended consequence. By pushing Canada away, he had driven it straight into China's arms. Behind closed doors, American officials scrambled. Businesses were losing billions. The pressure was mounting. Even Trump's supporters, Farmers, auto workers, and manufacturers began demanding change. And then, after months of tension, came the turning point: a new trade deal. In November 2018, the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, was signed. NAFTA was dead. The new agreement eased some of the most damaging tariffs, but it also solidified one undeniable truth: the Canada-US relationship had changed forever. Trust was broken. Canada had learned that it could no longer rely on the United States as its primary trade partner. The US had learned that economic warfare came with consequences, and the world had learned that even the closest of allies could turn into adversaries overnight. But the story didn't end there. Even after the signing of USMCA, Canadian businesses had already adapted. The country's newfound trade relationships with China and other Asian markets continued to expand. Companies that had once depended solely on US buyers now had diversified supply chains. Farmers, manufacturers, and tech companies began seeing long-term benefits from trade diversification. Canada's shift had strengthened its economy, making it more resilient to US economic policies. Meanwhile, American businesses were left grappling with the consequences of a trade war that had weakened industries across the country. Some experts argued that the US had overplayed its hand. By assuming that Canada would have no choice but to cave, the Trump administration had instead forced its closest ally to find new trade partners and reduce its reliance on American markets. And now, as new global trade dynamics emerge, one question remains: did Canada win the trade war? Or was this just the beginning of a new kind of economic battle?